I now hand the conference to Sandeep Bakshi, Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good evening to all of you, and welcome to the ICICI Bank earnings call to discuss the results for Q3 of financial year 2021. Joining us today on this call are Vishakha, Anup, Sandeep Batra, Rakesh, and Anindya. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you are safe and in good health. India has embarked on what we hope would be the last stage of its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic with the launch of the nationwide vaccination drive. We would like to extend our gratitude to the relentless efforts of the medical and research fraternity, healthcare staff, and all the essential service providers who have helped to put up a strong fight against COVID-19. I would also like to take a moment here to thank our employees for their service to customers in these challenging times. The bank's Economic Research Group's proprietary Ultra Frequency Index, which comprises several high-frequency indicators, high of 106.3 for the week ending January 17. The index has remained above 100 for the last 4 weeks, indicating that economic activity has crossed pre-COVID levels. Several high-frequency indicators such as rural unemployment rates, rail freight revenues, power consumption, e-way bill generation, and electronic toll collections were above the pre-COVID levels consistently in the last 4 weeks. The month of December registered the highest ever monthly collections of GST, primarily on the back of festive season sales and rise in collections on imports. The record agricultural output across Kharif and Rabi seasons last year, steady rise in Rabi crop sowing in the current season, and increase in tractor sales point towards a strong rural economy. There has also been an uptick in property registrations in December compared to September. These trends are also reflected in the business and results of ICICI Bank as we continue to steadily grow our business within our well-defined framework. Number one, growth in the core operating profit in a risk-calibrated manner through the focused pursuit of target market segments. The core operating profit increased by 14.8% year-on-year to 80.54 billion rupees in Q3 of 2021. The profit after tax increased by 19.2% to 49.40 billion rupees in Q3 of 2021 from 41.46 billion rupees in Q3 last year. Number two, further enhancing our strong deposit franchise. Deposit growth continued to be strong with 22.1% year-on-year growth in total deposits at December 31, 2020. During the quarter, average current account deposits increased by 26.5% year-on-year and average savings account deposits by 15.9% year-on-year. The liquidity coverage ratio for the quarter was 146%, reflecting significant surplus liquidity. Our cost of deposits continues to be amongst the lowest in the system. Our 360-degree customer coverage, digital platforms, and efforts towards process decongestion have played an important role in the growth of our deposit franchise. Number three, growing our loan portfolio in a granular manner with a focus on risk and reward. The continued pickup in economic activity and tailwinds from the festive season, combined with the bank's digital initiatives and extensive franchise, reflected in an increase in disbursements across retail products during this quarter. Mortgage disbursements increased further in this quarter over the previous quarter, driven by our efforts to offer a convenient and frictionless experience to customers by digitizing the entire underwriting process with instant loan approvals. Disbursements of auto loans have continued to increase from the September levels and have crossed pre-COVID levels in December. Till January 27, 2021, we have disbursed about 120 billion rupees under the ECLGS 1.0 scheme, and about 6 billion rupees has been dispersed under the ECLGS 2.0 scheme. The overall retail portfolio grew by 15.4% year-on-year and 6.8% sequentially. The growth of the performing domestic corporate portfolio was 9.6% year-on-year and 8.5% sequentially. Overall, the domestic loan portfolio grew by 13.3% year-on-year and 7.5% sequentially. The overseas branches portfolio, and within that, the non-India linked corporate portfolio, declined both year-on-year and sequentially in line with the approach which we had here. Fourth, leveraging digital across our business. We have continued to reimagine existing digital journeys in order to decongest service delivery and enhance the customer experience. The ICICI Stack helps us to curate and offer hyper-personalized solutions to our customers, suiting their life stage and business needs. During this quarter, we expanded our state-of-the-art mobile banking app, iMobile, to iMobile Pay, which offers payment and banking services to customers of any bank. iMobile Pay can be used for making payments using UPI. It also offers instant banking services such as opening savings account, investments, loans, and credit cards. We have seen about 500,000 activations of iMobile Pay from non-ICICI Bank customers since it was launched just 2 months ago. We offer bespoke digital solutions for corporate and institutional customers, which enable us to tap into their ecosystem. The steady increase in adoption of these solutions and fund flows through our digital financial supply chain and trade platforms have contributed to the growth of our deposit franchise. We have launched an online platform called Infinite India, offering not only banking solutions but also other value-added services for foreign companies looking to establish or expand business in the country. Number 5, protecting the balance sheet from potential risks. The indicators around economic activities have been positive, and this reflects in the trends of our portfolio. The trends in collections and overdues across loan portfolios continue to improve during the third quarter of the current fiscal year. Rakesh will expand on this later. Loans amounting to 82.80 billion rupees at December 31, 2020, compared to 14 billion rupees at September 30, 2020, were not classified as non-performing pursuant to the Supreme Court's interim order. The total fund based outstanding to all borrowers under resolution as per RBI's framework, not included in these pro forma NPA numbers, is 25.46 billion rupees, or about 0.4% of the total loan portfolio at December 31, 2020. These are in line with or better than our expectations of NPA additions and loans under resolution. During Q3 of 2021, the bank made contingency provision amounting to 30.12 billion rupees for borrower accounts not classified as non-performing pursuant to the Supreme Court's interim order, and utilized 18.00 billion rupees of COVID-19 related provisions made in earlier periods. Accordingly, the bank held aggregate COVID-19 related provisions of 99.84 billion rupees at December 31, 2020, compared to 87.72 billion rupees at September 30, 2020. This includes contingency provision of pro forma NPAs amounting to 35.09 billion rupees at December 31, 2020, compared to 4.97 billion rupees at September 30, 2020. On a pro forma basis, the provisioning coverage ratio continued to be robust at 77.6% as of December 31, 2020. Mentioned in our previous earnings call, our aim is to be proactive in provisioning with the objective of ensuring that the balance sheet is robust at all times. Send our provisioning policies on NPAs during this quarter. Our contingency provisions on pro forma non-performing loans during the quarter also take into account the revised policy. The provisions during the quarter were higher by about 21 billion rupees due to this more conservative approach. To sum quality, the provision coverage ratio on a pro forma basis is robust. less than 90-day overdues above the normal pre-COVID level, substantially lower at end December compared to end September. We are confident that the COVID-19 provisions we hold as of end December will completely cushion the balance sheet from potential credit losses which may arise due to the pandemic. As we have stated earlier, we expect credit costs to normalize in fiscal 2022 based on our current expectations of economic activity and portfolio trends. Sorry. Number 6, maintaining a strong capital base. The capital position of the bank continued to be strong with a CET1 ratio of 16.79%, including the profits for 9 months of the current fiscal year. This strong capital position does not of the bank's investments in listed subsidiaries of about 764 billion rupees. Looking ahead, we see optimism in the economy supported by the indicators of resumption of economic activity and continued growth in digitization. We believe our extensive franchise, high-quality digital solutions, our approach of 360-degree customer centricity, our prudent risk management practices, and our strong capital ratios put us in a good position for opportunities that will arise in the near and medium term. We will continue to focus on delivering consistent and predictable returns to our shareholders. With these opening remarks, I will now hand the call over to Rakesh.
Thank you, Sandeep. I'll talk about the balance sheet growth, credit quality, P&L details, capital adequacy, portfolio trends, and performance of the subsidiaries. Starting with the balance sheet growth, the overall loan portfolio grew by 10% year-on-year at December 31st. The domestic loan portfolio grew by 13.3% year-on-year and 7.5% sequentially at December 31st. The retail portfolio grew by 15.4% year-on-year and 6.8% sequentially. Within the retail portfolio, the mortgage loan portfolio grew by 15% year-on-year, business banking by 39.4%, rural lending by 24.6%, vehicle and equipment loans by 8.1%, and auto loan portfolio by 6.9%. Growth in the personal loan and credit card portfolio was 9.1%. This portfolio was 636.56 billion rupees, or 9.1% of the overall loan book at December 31st. The disbursements in the retail portfolio have increased substantially in Q3 compared to Q2. Sandeep has already talked about the trends in the mortgages and auto loans portfolios. While the disbursements in the commercial vehicle and personal loan portfolios have increased in Q3 compared to Q2, they continue to remain below pre-COVID levels. Credit card spends have reached pre-COVID levels in December, led by increased spends in categories such as health and wellness, electronics, and e-commerce. These trends resulted in healthy sequential growth across portfolios. The SME business, comprising borrowers with a turnover of less than 2.5 billion rupees, grew by 24.6% year-on-year to 270.93 billion rupees at December 31st. The growth of the performing domestic corporate portfolio was 9.6% year-on-year and 8.5% sequentially, driven by disbursements to higher-rated corporates to meet their working capital and capital expenditure requirements. While various sectors and corporate clients contributed to this growth, some focus segments were highly rated PSUs and large established corporate groups. The overseas loan portfolio declined by 25.7% year-on-year in US dollar terms at December 31st. The overseas loan portfolio is now 6.2% of the overall loan book at December 31st. We had mentioned in our previous quarter earnings call that we would be progressively exiting our non-India linked exposure in a planned manner. The non-India linked corporate portfolio reduced by 48% year-on-year and 14% sequentially at December 31st. Coming to the funding side, we continue to focus on daily average CASA balances and retail term deposits. Average savings account deposits increased by 15.9% year-on-year, and average current account deposits increased 6.5% year-on-year during the quarter. Total term deposits grew by 26.1% year-on-year to 4.8 trillion rupees at December 31st. Coming to credit quality, loans aggregating 82.80 billion rupees compared to 14.1 billion rupees at September 30th were not classified as non-performing at December 31st pursuant to the Supreme Court's interim order. Of the 82.8 billion rupees at December 31st, 75.2 billion rupees was from the retail portfolio and 7.59 billion rupees was from the corporate and SME portfolio. The reported gross NPA additions during the quarter were 4.71 billion rupees. Recoveries and upgrades, excluding write-offs, were 17.76 billion rupees in the current quarter. There were recoveries and upgrades of 9.33 billion rupees from the retail portfolio and 8.43 billion rupees from the corporate and SME portfolio. The gross NPAs written off during the quarter were 27.36 billion rupees. The gross NPAs sold during the quarter was 0.88 billion rupees. The net non-performing assets were 48.61 billion rupees at December 31st, compared to 71.88 billion rupees at September 30th. The gross NPA ratio was 4.38% and the net NPA ratio was 0.63% at December 31st, 2020. The gross NPA ratio on a pro forma basis was 5.42% at December 31st, compared to 5.36% at September 30th. The pro forma net NPA ratio was 1.26% at December 31st, compared to 1.12% at September 30th. We had mentioned in our previous quarter's earnings call that the corporate loans under resolution via the framework announced by RBI in August would be less than 1% of the total loan portfolio of the bank. Excluding pro forma NPAs, the total fund-based outstanding to all borrowers under resolution is about 25.46 billion rupees, or about 0.4% of the total loan portfolio at the first. Of the above fund-based outstanding, 8.37 billion rupees was from the retail loan portfolio. The bank holds provisions of 3.85 billion rupees for these borrowers, which is higher than the requirement as per RBI guidelines. Going forward, the asset classification of corporate and SME borrowers under resolution would depend on the timing of implementation of resolution schemes and payment performance in the interim. As you are aware, there is time till June 30th for the resolution to be implemented. Resolution has also been invoked for pro forma NPA loans, which have crossed 90 days at December 31st, amounting to 8.88 billion rupees. Compared to the normal pre-COVID trend, the percentage of the retail EMI products and credit card portfolio, which was overdue for less than 90 days, was about 1.5% higher at December 31st, compared to about 4% higher at September 30th. The percentage of the performing rural portfolio, which was overdue at December 31st, was about 1.5% higher than the normal pre-COVID trend, compared to about 1% higher at September 30th. The percentage of the SME and business banking portfolio overdue for less than 90 days was similar to the pre-COVID levels at September end and remained so at December end also. In the domestic and overseas corporate portfolio, less than 2% of the portfolio was overdue for less than 90 days at December 31st, compared to less than 3% at September 30th. Coming to the P&L, net interest income increased by 16% year-on-year to 99.12 billion rupees. Interest on income tax refund was 1.96 billion rupees this quarter, compared to 0.26 billion rupees in the previous quarter and 0.16 billion rupees in Q3 of last year. We have reversed the interest accrued on pro forma NPAs, and the same is reflected in the net interest income for the current and previous quarter. The net interest margin was at 3.67% in Q3, compared to 3.57% in Q2 and 3.77% in Q3 of last year. The impact of interest on income tax refund and interest collection from NPA was about 11 basis points this quarter, compared to about 3 basis points in Q2 and about 10 basis points in Q3 of last year. The domestic NIM was at 3.78% this quarter, compared to 3.72% and 4.04% in Q3 last year. International margins were at 0.34%. The cost of deposits was 3.97% in Q3, compared to 4.22% in Q2. Non-interest income, excluding treasury income, declined by 3% year-on-year to 39.21 billion rupees in Q3. Fee income was 36.01 billion rupees in Q3, compared to a decline of 30.8% year-on-year in Q1 and 9.7% year-on-year in Q2. Fee income grew by 0.1% year-on-year in Q3. The sequential growth in fee income was 14.7%, reflecting the continued normalization in customer spending and borrowing activity. Dividend income from subsidiaries was 3.56 billion rupees in Q3 of 2021, compared to 3.67 billion rupees in Q3 last year. The bank's operating expenses increased by 3.7% year-on-year in Q3. The operating expenses increased by 12.6% sequentially. Expenses increased marginally by 0.4% year-on-year. The bank had 92,103 employees at December 31st. We increased during Q4. Non-employee expenses increased by 5.5% year-on-year in Q3 due to increase in retail business-related costs and technology-related expenses, partly offset by decrease in advertisement and sales promotion expenses. We would expect business-related expenses to increase in future quarters as business volumes increase levels. We continue to make investments in technology and to grow our franchise. As a result of the above, the core operating profit increased 8% year-on-year to 80.54 billion rupees in Q3. The core operating profit grew by 15.9% during the 9 months ended. The treasury income was 7.66 billion rupees this quarter compared to 5.42 billion rupees in Q2. The treasury income this quarter includes 3.29 billion rupees from the sale of 2.2% stake in ICICI Securities compared to 3.05 billion rupees in Q2. These stake sales were undertaken to meet the minimum public shareholding requirement by March 2021 as required by applicable regulation. During Q3, the bank made contingency provision amounting to 2 billion rupees for pro forma NPAs. We utilized 18 billion rupees of COVID-related provisions made in the earlier periods. Accordingly, the bank held aggregate COVID-19 related provision of 99.84 billion rupees at December 31st compared to 87.72 billion rupees at September 30th. This includes contingency provision for pro forma NPAs amounting to 35.09 billion rupees at December 31st compared to 4.97 billion rupees. On a pro forma basis, the provision coverage ratio continued to be robust at 77.6% at December 31st. At December 31st, the total outstanding COVID-19 related provisions for non-fund based outstanding to NPAs, general provisions on standard assets and other standard asset provisions, 164.01 billion rupees or 2.3% of loans. This includes contingency provisions of 35.09 billion rupees on I talked about earlier. As Sandeep mentioned, we are confident that these provisions will completely cushion the balance sheet from the potential credit losses which may arise due to. The profit before tax increased by 11.2% to 60.78 billion rupees in Q3 compared to 54.65 billion rupees. The tax expense was 11.38 billion rupees this quarter compared to 13.19 billion rupees in the corresponding quarter last. The tax expense declined due to lower effective tax rate in Q3, mainly because of higher gains from sale of stakes in subsidiaries in fiscal 2021, which are subject to lower tax. After tax grew by 19.2% to 49.40 billion rupees in Q3 this year compared to 41.46 billion rupees in Q3. The consolidated profit after tax was 54.98 billion rupees this quarter compared to 48.82 billion rupees in Q2 and 46.7 billion rupees. The consolidated ROE was 14.6% this quarter. The CET1 ratio, including profits for 9 months of 2021, was 16.79% at December 31st compared to 16.54% at September 30th. Including profits for 9 months, the Tier 1 ratio was 18.12% and the total capital adequacy was 19.51% at December 31st. Coming to some details on the portfolio, we are focused on growing our loan portfolio in a granular manner with a focus on risk and reward. Our retail portfolio is built based on proprietary data and analytics in addition to bureau checks and well priced in relation to the risk. Our strong deposit franchise enables us to offer competitive pricing to the selected customer segments. We have given further information on our portfolio in slides 31 to 34 of our presentation. The loans and non-fund based outstanding to corporate and SME borrowers rated BB and below, excluding pro forma NPAs, was 180.61 billion rupees at December 31st compared to 161.67 billion rupees at September 30th, details of which are given on slide 35 of the presentation. Other than 4 accounts, 2 in construction sector and 1 each in the telecom and power sector, The maximum single borrower outstanding in the BB and below portfolio was about 6 billion rupees at December 31st. On slide 36 of the presentation, we have provided the movement in our BB and below portfolio during Q3. The rating downgrades from investment grade categories were 22.39 billion rupees. Rates were largely from the construction sector. There was a net decrease in outstanding of 1.45 billion rupees. There was a reduction of 1.5 billion rupees due to increase of pro forma NPAs and devolvement of 0.77 billion rupees of non-fund based outstanding to NPAs. And there were upgrades of 0.27 billion NPA to below investment grade categories. Except one lease rental discounting account, all corporate and SME borrowers under resolution as per RBI's framework were rated below investment grade at December 31st. The builder portfolio, including construction finance, lease rental discounting, term loans, and working capital loans, was 225.57 billion rupees at December 31st, which is 3.2% of our total loan portfolio. As mentioned in our earlier calls, our portfolio is granular generally, with the larger exposures being to well-established builders. About 13% of our builder portfolio at December 31st was either rated BB and below internally or was classified as non-performing. The total outstanding to NBFCs and HFCs was 576.29 billion rupees at December 31st compared to 500 billion rupees at September 30th. The total outstanding loans to NBFCs and HFCs were about 6% of our advances at December 31st. The details are given on slide 38 of the investor presentation. Our exposure is largely to well-rated entities with PSUs, long vintage entities owned by banks, and well-established corporate groups. The sequential increase in the outstanding to NBFC and HFC during the quarter reflects this. The proportion of the NBFC and HFC portfolio internally rated BB and below is about 1%. Coming to our overseas portfolio, excluding exposures to financial institutions and retail lending against deposits, the total corporate fund and non-fund outstanding of overseas branches, net of cash or bank or insurance-backed lending, was 5.2 billion rupees at December 31st to $5.47 billion at September 30th and $8.62 billion at December 31st last year. 69% of the outstanding at December 31st was to Indian corporates and their subsidiaries and joint ventures. 16% of the outstanding was to non-India companies with Indian or India-linked operations and activities. The portfolio in this segment is well rated, and the Indian operations of these companies are target customers for the bank's deposit and transaction banking franchise, and we will continue to pursue risk-calibrated opportunities in this segment. 6% of the outstanding was to companies owned by NRIs or PIOs. 9% of the outstanding was to other non-India companies, which is less than 1% of the total portfolio of the bank. Coming to subsidiaries, the details of the financial performance of subsidiaries is covered in slides 43, 44 and 63 to 68 in the presentation. Just briefly, value of new business of ICICI Life was 10.3 billion rupees in 9 months. The new business margin increased from 21.7% in fiscal 2020 to 26% in this 9 months. Business margin was 25.7% this quarter. The protection-based annualized premium equivalent was 7.03 billion rupees and accounted for 17.8% of the total annual equivalent in 9 months. The new business premium was 78.99 billion rupees in this 9 months. The gross direct premium income of ICICI General increased by 9.2% year-on-year to 40.34 billion rupees in Q3 this year, compared to 36.93 billion rupees in Q3 last year. The combined ratio improved to 97.9% in Q3 compared to 98.7% in Q3 of 2020. The profit after tax grew by 6.6% year-on-year to 3.14 billion rupees this quarter from 2.94 billion rupees in Q3 last year. The profit after tax of ICICI AMC was 3.58 billion rupees in the current quarter compared to 3.05 billion rupees in Q3 last year. The profit after tax of ICICI Securities on a consolidated basis was 2.67 billion rupees in the current quarter compared to 1.37 billion rupees in Q3 of last year. ICICI Bank Canada had a profit after tax of 5.1 million Canadian dollars in the current quarter, which was at a similar level compared to Q2 and compared to $22.1 million in Q3 of last year. The profit after tax was higher in Q3 of last year, recovery from India-linked impaired corporate loans during that period. The loan book of ICICI Bank Canada at December 31st declined by 77.5% year-on-year and 3.7% sequentially. ICICI Bank UK had a profit after tax of $2.2 million this quarter compared to $8 million in Q3 of last year and $4.9 million in Q2 of 2021. The loan book of ICICI Bank UK at December 31st declined by 28.9% year-on-year and 11.6% sequentially. ICICI Home Finance had a profit after tax of 0.03 billion rupees in the current quarter, which was at a similar level compared to Q3 of last year. With this, we conclude our opening remarks, and we will now be happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Mahrukh Adajania from Elara Capital.
Hi, congratulations. My first question is, could you give the breakdown of pro forma slippages?
So, Mahrukh, we talked about the fact that the actual slippage was 4.71 billion rupees, and the pro forma as of December 31st was 82.8 billion rupees, which was an increase of 68 billion rupees, compared to September position. So the 68 billion rupees and 4.7, about 73 billion rupees is the increase that we have seen during the quarter. A large part of this has been from the retail portfolio.
Okay, but would there be any breakdown on how much is from unsecured, how much is from secured, any such breakdown?
So, Mahrukh, normally on the retail side, we give the aggregate, additions and deletions on the portfolio. To give a sense, I think we have seen, across portfolios, the slippages, if you are comparing it to an earlier period, of course, it is higher across products. I think during this quarter, we have seen that the entire portfolio, has got tested for payment because it has come out of, moratorium. So the increase that we have seen on the NPA or the pro forma NPA is largely in line with what we were expecting across portfolios, or slightly better in some of the portfolios. So that is the color that we can give on this. Going forward, we would expect to see some bit lower addition. I'm taking pro forma as the comparator number. The moratorium period has got over and the full impact has been seen in the December quarter.
Okay, so going forward, you said some bit, as in on the 67 billion. Shouldn't it be substantial?
So, Mahrukh, we don't want to really comment on how that number will, pan out, but it should be lower than where we are in the December quarter in terms of additions. I think that's the reason we gave also a color on the portfolio, which is, the overdue portfolio. We had talked about that in September also. So we have seen, there the trends have, improved. On the retail now we are, about 1.5% higher than the pre-COVID normal trend, compared to 4%, that was the case in September. So overall, the overdue portfolio also has, come down. So yes, we should see, improvement going forward. How substantial it is, we will have to see how it, plays out. There are a lot of moving parts there. But again, to reiterate what we said, Mahrukh, I think, we have taken provisions, upfront, in March and June quarter. We have utilized some of that provision, this quarter of about 18 billion rupees. We have tightened some of our provisioning policies to take more provision on NPAs. So overall, we are quite comfortable with the trends that we are seeing on the portfolio, and especially the one variable which was there in October was around the restructuring or the resolution, pipeline which could be there. As you see, that number is pretty much, pretty similar to actually the pipeline we had in, October, and we are not seeing much of an increase there. So these are the trends, which give us some comfort that going forward the numbers should decline. But again, the numbers will be higher than trend, for March quarter. That will be the case because the overdues are currently higher than the normal pre-COVID level.
Got it. And whatever is downgraded in double B, does that overlap with the restructuring invoked?
So there will be an overlap there. So if you look at the closing book, Maruf, the 180 billion rupees of double B and below, that includes all the corporate and SME restructuring, other than one account which I mentioned. It's not a large account; it's an LRD account, so it continues to be investment grade. But the 180 billion rupees includes all the corporate and SME restructured pipeline. The downgrades that we saw of 22 billion rupees during the quarter would also have come largely from the the restructuring proposals that we have received and we have invoked. There would be a couple of other smaller size accounts also which have got downgraded. That's why that number is 22 billion rupees during the quarter.
Got it. But most of the restructuring is corporate only.
So of the total, about 25 billion rupees, as we said, eight. So this 25 billion rupees is the set of accounts which are not overdue for more than 90 days at December 31st, because those which are overdue, we are anyway counting in the pro forma, so we don't want to double count there. The 25 billion rupees which are less than 90 days overdue, 8 billion rupees is retail, and about 17 billion rupees fund-based is corporate.
Got it. And just one last question on the provisioning policy. What policy has changed?
So what we have looked at is that we have made our provision policy for some of the NPAs as more conservative. So essentially increasing the provisioning on the early buckets, and also preponing a bit when we reach the 100% provision level. And that's the reason you would see that on the pro forma NPAs for the quarter of 80 billion rupees, we are already at 35 billion rupees of provision between the 5 billion 3 billion rupees we did in this quarter. So we are pretty much at 40% in the first quarter itself. So we have kind of increased the early bucket provisioning for the NPAs. And this is not a one-time change in policy. This is something that we will continue with in future.
Oh, so now the first bucket will be around 40%, is it? Or this is just because of the mix?
Maru, that varies. The first portfolio, so it will definitely be different for, say, a mortgage or a car loan or an unsecured retail or corporate. I was saying that because this quarter will have an impact on the stock, the entire book impact will be there in this quarter, as well. So we have increased the provision that we take in the early buckets on.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. This is from the line of Jay Mundra from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the detailed disclosure. Sir, if I were to look at this pro forma GNPA number of 8,200 crore, this is just the net number, right? I mean, the gross minus gross. So the slippages for the quarter, it should be, 8,200 crores plus 1,800 crores of recovery plus 2,700 crores of write-off. Is that the right way to look at it? I mean, only the gross slippages perspective.
No. That's not right. So if we have, the table that we have on slide 26, if you have it in front of you, we have given the movement in NPA, based on the reported NPA as per the current guidelines of RBI, and not classifying accounts which are more than 90 days, overdue. So the the total gross addition is 4.71 billion rupees. Correct. And that is a gross addition. That has nothing to do with recoveries and write-offs. So in addition to that 4.71 billion rupees, we also had 82.80 billion rupees of loans which were overdue for more than 90 days at December 31st, and we could not classify them as NPA because of the Supreme Court, ruling. That 82.80 billion number, the corresponding number in September was 14 billion rupees. So there was a 68 billion rupee increase in the 90-day overdue, which we were not able to classify during the quarter. So the 68 plus the 4.7, that's 73 billion rupees. would be a reflection of, the gross additions that you are looking at. And, then you would have had the, recoveries of 17.76 and write-offs and all of that. So that is how one has to look at it. And this 82.80 billion rupees, again, just to clarify, this is loans which are at a borrower level, outstanding for more than 90 days. So if a borrower has, 2 or 3 accounts, even if one account is more than 90 days, all the accounts are categorized as pro forma NPA in this number.
Right. Great. Right. So understood, sir. So actually this is QOQ 404 billion plus, let us say 62 billion minus recovery, that comes to 431 billion. So I think that is clear that way.
Yeah.
And second question is, sir, on BB and below book. Now we have been carrying this book for so many quarters, and I think even in the last 6 months, this has further credit tested, and probably only a small portion have asked for restructuring. So how should one look at the riskiness going forward, or would it be too early to sort of comment there?
No, I think like we have said earlier, it is it is below investment grade for us. So by definition, this is relatively higher risk, and ideally we would want it to be zero, but in banking business that can never be zero. So I think the level at which it is right now, it's not it's not a number that we over worry about. If you look at the 180 billion rupees, out of that, anyways, 44 billion rupees is non-fund outstanding to NPAs. So it's not really BB and below. It's non-fund outstanding to NPAs, on which we already hold provisions. We hold about 14 billion rupees of provision. We disclose that on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So if you remove that, the rest of it is 135 billion rupees. A lot of it is granular. 40 billion rupees is individual size, less than 1 billion rupees. So it is a part of the overall portfolio that you will always have some amount of BB and below. And the reason we call out the larger exposure, so we have 4 accounts, which are larger than 6 billion rupees, within this BB and below. Out of which, one is a account in construction sector, which has sought restructuring. So that has got included this quarter in the BB and below. There is one non-fund based outstanding for a construction company which is already classified as NPA. And then there is one each in telecom and power, where we have been getting the payments. The telecom one is non-fund. The power one is where we have been getting payments. Some delays are there, but it's a large promoter there as well. So overall, of course, it's a risky book, so I don't want to say we are comfortable, but that is the color of the book which we can give.
Sure, sir. And just last clarification, so I think you had clarified, but just to double check, this 1,700 crore restructuring request which have come from BB and below book, they are sitting at both places, right? So if one were to add restructuring plus BB and below, so 1,700 crore of restructuring is actually part of BB and below.
So if you look at the position at December 31st, you are right that 180 billion rupees already includes the corporate restructuring request that has come, other than one account, which is a lease rental discounting account, which is still investment grade. So that is the position at December 31st. The downgrades that we have seen during the quarter of 22 billion rupees, that would include, a few cases which were investment grade and would have sought, restructuring. But at the end of December 31st, the BB and below includes, all the restructuring barring one case.
Thank you, sir, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we'd like to request participants that in order that the management is able to address questions from all participants in the conference, please limit your questions to 2 per participant. Should you have a follow-up question, we request you to rejoin the queue. We take the next question from the line of Nitin Aggarwal from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. My question is again on the BB and below book. Now, we have not seen as much of slippages or restructuring requests as to how much one can really expect this book to throw up, because despite all the focus, this book remains still around, say, 18,000 odd crores. It has been pretty sticky and increasing very marginally. So are we being too conservative here in terms of our classification? Because our peers have actually reported a decline in the absolute size of the book.
So I think we have we believe a pretty standard process which our risk team runs for the rating of the portfolio. Of course, the risk team is completely independent of business. The business team may have a different view on some of these accounts, but it's a very consistent process. So I don't think we have become overly conservative on these ratings. I think like I gave you an example of the larger accounts. There are some challenges or the other in each of these accounts, and it's a regular review that we do. So even as we December 31st now, there would have been some accounts which would have got upgraded during this period, maybe downgraded. So it's it is a continuous process which is there, and at the end of a certain amount of book which will be there in the double B and below bucket. I think largely it is not lumpy other than the accounts, so it is not something which we overly worry about.
Okay. And two clarifications. One is on the margin, like we have reported a 10 basis point sequential improvement, but both our domestic and overseas margins have expanded by 6 and 8 basis points. So what am I missing here? Like what is driving this blended 10 basis point improvement? And secondly, our tax rate for the year so far is around 19%. It's moving between 18 and 19% every quarter. So where do we expect this for the year end for FY22?
So on the tax rate, this year, as I said, I think we have got the benefit of the lower tax which is applicable on the capital gains, and we had a good amount of gain in the 9 months period, especially in Q1, from the sale of shares in the subsidiaries. So the tax rate, this year, and the tax, as you know, what we provide every quarter is based, or the 9 months period is based on the full year estimated tax rate. So the tax rate for this 9 months period is what you can extrapolate as our estimate for the tax rate for the full year. Going forward next year, I think we will be at marginal tax rate which is there. We get some amount of benefit, maybe 1%, 1.5%, which will come because of dividend income and all of that. So that's how the tax rate will go up, next year. Exactly very difficult to say because it will still be a function of the composition of the income which is there. On the net interest margin, you can don't do this domestic overseas and try to tally that. As you would appreciate, we have lending from domestic into overseas also. So it will not always net off. The domestic and overseas margins here are the gross ones, for domestic book and overseas book. When we report at the bank level, if there are some lending from domestic to overseas, that would get netted off. So that's why a few basis point up and down will always be there. The domestic and overseas is on the gross book which is there. So there's the inter branch elimination that will happen. That's the only reason.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Parmeshwaran S. from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Hi Rakesh, this is Prakhar, and congratulations to all of you for being able to manage in such tough times. Just a couple of things on the retail side, Rakesh. You did indicate the split of slippages across retail and corporate on a pro forma basis. Just to get a hunch, would it be fair to assess, like your peer group, in this quarter, unsecured slippages would have been elevated much more? So, peers have seen something like 4 to 5% of the unsecured book slip into NPA fully it normalizes. So, would it be fair to assume that the numbers would be somewhere in that handle or probably even lower because you've been fairly conservative on the lending side?
So, sir, I actually talked, in response to an earlier query in terms of how it's are. I think, we have seen, slippages, across portfolio. For example, on the secured side also, we have seen slippages, to be there. For example, on mortgages, there the installment amounts are large. So at times, customers are not able to, make those payments. I think what will we have to just see over the next, few months how it, kind of eventually plays out. But we have seen it's not that, unsecured is a very disproportionate, contribution to the gross NPA addition. We have seen on the secured side, also. And again, like I said, Prakhar, when we had done our analysis, we were finding that on the secured side also, we would see, slippages. For example, in card loans, the proportion of salaried customers are generally lower, so you will have, thing in there. Mortgages, I said, the EMI levels are higher, so people take some more time to kind of, become, current as well. So it is spread across portfolio, but across all portfolios, it is in line with our expectation. And in some of the portfolios, rural, business banking, SME, corporate, it is better than what we would have estimated.
Sure. And so, just a corrected question on this one. So, now that the portfolio has broadly behaved well and within your expectations, it's great to see that last quarter you didn't make any provisions. From now on, you have the comfort to start, digging in. So, would it be fair to also assume that from a strategy perspective, you don't need to really make any material changes in terms of new client acquisitions and, the you gave, etc., on the retail loan? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think, the fact that the growth that you're seeing across portfolios, on the retail side, business banking, SME, corporate, that reflects, the comfort and the confidence that we have in terms of the framework that we have for underwriting. So there we are, pretty comfortable. Of course, we have, tightened some of the parameters based on the, current environment. The entire focus is to ensure, that we get, a set of customers, who we are, comfortable with in terms of return of capital, and that's the philosophy across all portfolios.
And just one last question. The credit card part, nice improvement and probably supported by the festive, lending or usage. Would the level of revolvers, etc., come down in this period, or they are like, it's a different way because there is a lot of pay later stuff that is happening in the market. So would the proportion of revolvers be stable as it used to be, or would it have moved a little more than usual?
I don't think, Prakhar, in a period of 3 months, much changes. I think the growth that you see on the credit card book, please look at it in the context that, in the festive season, in the December quarter, every year that growth is there. So it is not something which is, so indeed it has grown by 10%, this quarter. Would have been similar last year, December over September also. So there is nothing, different there.
Perfect. This is very useful, Rakesh. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amit Premchandani from UTI Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. In the restructuring number that you have given, is this all in restructuring or whatever you have actually accepted?
The invoked and accepted will be same, Amit. So it is the these are loans which are invoked. So these will get restructured. These will get restructured.
Are there any proposals still left?
No. So December 31st was the the last day for actually invoking. So on the retail and corporate piece anyway, there will not be any increase which will be there. I think on the MSME piece, there's time till March 31st. We have not seen much restructuring there. So it will not change materially from here for sure.
And any DCCO extension for the real estate projects which are not part of this restructuring number that you have given?
So DCCO extensions have been normal and
specific in this quarter.
Post-COVID also. In fact, I must add that post-RERA, I think things have become just more organized. So two things have happened. One is it has become more organized. Certainly it is moving towards stronger builders. And people certainly are more conscious about completion on time and things like that. But DCCO, not because of COVID. In fact, if at all, sales have only increased. You must be reading it everywhere. So DCCO, whatever was there, was there.
But sir, still, if you can answer the question, 22,000 crore of builder portfolio, what was the DCCO last 9 months?
I don't have that number offhand. What I can say is that, it's not something
it is not
which is abnormal or which will have an portfolio. I think we are comfortable with the portfolio. We talked about some of those details in terms of the granular nature of the portfolio, and wherever we have slightly larger exposure, those are to well-established builders. Overall, we are comfortable with that portfolio.
Because
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because of COVID, I don't think we have done any material DCCO extension because of COVID.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Saurabh from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Sir, a question on the corporate and the SME growth. You've grown 8% quarter-on-quarter and 16% quarter-on-quarter in SME. Could you just comment on the quality of, the book you are originating in the corporate book, and how do you see the ROA profile of these loans? So that's one. The second is essentially on the international book. Where do you think this net interest margins can go to, or should we just assume it to be flattish at around these levels? Thank you.
On the corporate portfolio, the growth that we are seeing, I gave some color of that. This is, largely the new business that we have done during the quarter is, predominantly A- and above, internal rating clients. It is a mix of, short-term, long-term lending that we have done during the quarter. About half of it would have been, short-term in nature, meaning, less than 1 year maturity. Balance would have been longer-term loans. Loans are, of course, the longer-term loans are all, floating rate loans. On pricing, when the credit is good, pricing is always, competitive. For us, the cost of deposits are also pretty low. You have seen during the quarter also the cost of deposits have, come down. So we look at, this lending is not looked at as a standalone, lending in almost all the cases. It is looked at from a client profitability, point of view. So what, we track for each of the clients is client level return on equity. And that is something where we are, happy with the numbers that we have. Of course, there's a lot more that we can do to improve that. We have seen good amount of growth on the, the transaction banking side, FX, the current account growth that we have seen during the quarter YOY. A lot of that has come from the corporate clients. So on overall basis, we are, comfortable with the returns which are there. But yes, the markets are very competitive, and, so we get to look at all the deals virtually, where we believe it would make sense for the bank, from a return perspective, sometimes from a liquidity deployment perspective. We go ahead with those transactions. So that is how, we have, looked at it. On the SME business banking, I think, if you look at the last, couple of years, we have been going, quite well. I think the moratorium tested the portfolio. The portfolio has, come out, pretty well. These are portfolios where our market shares are generally lower than what we have on an average on the portfolio. So there's a lot more that we can do. There is a lot of, synergy outcome that we have seen as we do more and more of this business, through our branches. We have talked about during our analyst day about all the digital initiatives that we have taken. We have made the process also, the underwriting and all of that, much more decongested. So I think all of that is what is, flowing through this, this growth. And again, if you go back to last year, this was the growth trend which was there, for these portfolios as well. Overseas margins are difficult to say. I think, you should just assume it is around the level where it is. Because, we will not be doing, corporate lending there really. So a lot of it is trade finance kind of business, loan against FD, or those kind of, businesses where the margins, will be lower. The capital deployed will be lower. Overall, anyway, the book has now come down to about 6.5% of total loans. So, it's difficult to give further guidance on the margin per se. That's not a specific focus area for us to be able to project that out.
Okay. Thank you, Rakesh. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manish Shukla from Citigroup. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening and thank you for the opportunity. Of the ECLGS disbursement of about 120 billion, how much would have been under the SME segment and how much would be retail segment, the way you reported for your loan book?
So if you look at SME business banking, I think both put together would have been about maybe 1/3 of that, and the balance would have been across, the rest of the retail portfolio.
Okay.
The other question is that on the retail book for the last 2 quarters, you had fairly phenomenal growth, right? Previous quarter was 6%, this quarter is almost 7% sequential growth. Just to want to understand what's driving this in your view, and can this kind of pace of growth sustain because you are among the largest retail balance sheets in the country?
So, not very focused on, a particular number of growth, per se. I think the opportunity is there. We have seen, at least in the last few months, the economy has been recovering. There has been demand. So if the demand, sustains and, from our point of view, the pricing is appropriate, the customer profitability is appropriate, we believe we are very well positioned to grow. So in terms of, we have enabled, we have talked about all that we have done on the processes of underwriting, on the digital enablement, especially in the mortgages that we have done. So from a growth point of view, we would be, happy to grow, as long as it meets our, return criteria. On the risk part of it, we are very clear in terms of, what we want to underwrite, what we don't want to underwrite. And as more and more we have started looking at customers, on a 360-degree basis. So as we drive, some of this business through our, ecosystems, like for example, we have seen a very good amount of growth coming in from the corporate ecosystem, the corporate salary accounts that we have. We have had a lot more focus on the liabilities. We also are doing a lot more on lending there, currently. So all of this, we believe, are things that we can do without, taking any undue risk or, diluting, our returns. Of course, in the near term, liquidity is surplus. You can see in our balance sheet also, we are sitting with significant surplus liquidity. LCR is 140, 150%. So some of it on pricing and all will always be a tactical call also in the near term. But from a growth point of view, we that is how we look at it. There is no specific number that we are chasing, on retail or on corporate side.
Also, I'll add, Rakesh, that our market shares, so we track market shares in each of our micro markets. So they are quite low. I mean, they are sub 5% actually in this business. So plus micro markets is there, plus we have worked a lot on process, plus because of ecosystem 360-degree banking, there is a lot more color we have on underwriting. So with this actually, and plus we have enabled and empowered our branches quite a bit. So net, I agree with Rakesh that there is a headroom for us to grow in these markets. In fact, across most products we have headroom to grow, because if you look at our market share compared to the potential that we have, I must say that we are still, we have not done justice to the potential that we have. We should do more justice to the potential that is there in the market.
Sure. Just one clarification. When you say that FY22 you expect to be a normalized year on credit cost, do you think it will be closer to your medium-term target of provisions to PPOP, which you articulated in the past?
Yeah. So, about 25% of core operating profit, is what we would be, looking at as a number. And that would translate to, I guess, 1.2 to 1.3% of average loans.
Perfect. That is clear. Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mahesh from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Rakesh, just two clarification the presentation. Slide 28, which you have given, what is available to you, which is outside the pro forma numbers, is 64.75 and 13.97. Is that correct?
The 35.09 is the provision that we hold against the pro forma NPAs. That 82.80 Mahesh that we talked about, against that we cannot take that 35.09 is that. 64.75 is the balance COVID, which is not, which is against, I guess, all the entire other portfolio. So during the quarter, the movement has been that we have taken 30 billion rupee provision on the pro forma NPAs. So 5 billion rupee, 4.97 has become 35.09. And we utilized 18 billion rupees from the COVID other provisions. So 82.75 has come down by 18 billion. Is that clear, Mahesh?
Okay. Yeah, sure. It's correct.
Yeah.
And if I remember, last quarter you had indicated that the ECLGS was at 160 billion. This quarter you kind of indicated 120.
This is the disbursements which are there.
So the sanctions is still at 160 or
Sanction amount. Yeah, that is the actual disbursed, amount.
okay? So the sanctions still remains at 160, or has that gone up this quarter?
Don't have the number right away, but it will be. I don't have the number right away. No.
Okay, sure. No issues. So just one clarification on slide 60. Is it fair to assume, just give me a minute of explain question. Your September you have a gross retail NPA of 92.63, and in December it is 68.88. So the difference between the two essentially represents upgradation write-offs.
Yeah, because
and if I hold that condition,
one only, so rest of it will be the upgrades and the write-off. Correct.
Yeah. So now if I move from 92.63 to 144.09, and I just do the back calculation again based on the initial numbers which I said, it shows that the retail book should have been about 75 billion, almost indicating that there was no slippages from the corporate side. I'm saying there will be a few aberrations to these numbers. Correct?
But we have given you the movement, no, Mahesh, that will just tell you the numbers actually. So if you look at it, we have given the 4.71 billion rupee ka breakup into retail and corporate, and we have also given the 82.80 billion rupee ka how much is corporate and if you look at the 4.71, 3.94 is retail, that 82.80 billion, 75 is retail. So indeed, most of the slippage during the quarter, as expected, has come from the retail side. So right.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. And last question to Anup. On the housing portfolio specifically, this massive shift that you're seeing today, is it because of one refinancing which is happening? Is it new loans, balance transfer? If you could just broadly comment on it, that would be it. And also, if the portfolio yield correction has completely taken place in your books. That's it. Thanks.
So first, let me take the portfolio yield correction. I think broadly yield correction has happened because everybody has put out so much of ads that even if you were putting shades and glares, you will see it. So I don't think there is anybody who has not seen that the rates have come down. So number one, I think everybody has done. So that is number one. Number two, certainly there is some element of balance transfer because everybody is matching the rates. So if you are giving it to new, why will you not hold on to your portfolio by correcting it? So, that is the second thing, that by and large, people hold on to their portfolio. Certainly, there is a demand in the market, number one. Number two, we are also seeing a shift in shares because of our process and better distribution and better analytics of our own customers who have taken loan from others, etc. And plus, engagement levels are much better. So I would say that partly demand, little bit of balance transfer, certainly not a majority or anything like that. And I would say that large part also because of our distribution process. I'm seeing that the gap is decreasing. Otherwise, it would have been a parallel stuff with everybody else. The shares are increasing.
Thanks. Sure. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Adarsh Parasampuria from CLSA. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Rakesh, question on margins. Just that it's held up well and this has the NI reversal as well. So can you talk about outlook on margins given that you are indicating that the back book repricing is almost through? Where are we in the cycle?
So, Adarsh, if you look at during the quarter, we have seen the yield on advances have indeed come down by about 44 basis point. It's there on slide 49.
Yeah.
But the overall interest earning assets has not come down as much because the yield on investments has not come down as much. Plus, the growth has happened on the advances. The rest of the portfolio, as the liquidity is getting deployed, has not. So going forward, I think. We should hopefully see improvement in margin, but again there are so many. One of course is the interest reversal itself. In March quarter we will still see NPL additions to clearly be higher than any kind of a normal level. So there will be some amount of that which will be there. But I think more and more the liquidity, will also start declining for us. The LCR numbers that you see, should, come down in the March quarter. That should help, the margin. I talked about on the lending side, the market is extremely competitive, so there the pricing pressure is definitely there on the new loans, that we are giving. So in short, others, we are not giving any guidance there, but I think the objective is to improve our margin, and we hopefully should be able to do that.
And Rakesh, did you quantify the interest reversal impact on NII? You have taken the NII line, right? So how much was that absolute number?
We have not. We don't disclose that separately. That's there in every quarter. Whenever NP addition happens, that reversal is always there. So.
Rakesh, just the only point I wanted to understand is this quarter would be a little different, that some accounts are under moratorium for 6 months and then they have become NPA. So the reversal is the easier question to ask is the reversal impact, it should have been materially higher than past quarters, because reversal could be for 8 months, 9 months here.
Yeah, that is possible. I think, one thing which is there, others right now, is that across all banks, right now things are a bit difficult to, compare because, the pro forma basis which is happening and moratorium and all of that. So I think, in terms of the interest treatment itself, during the period of moratorium, I think in some cases you have, accrued that as income. Some cases you have, put that as a deferred interest term loan itself. So the reversal, when it happens only for a 90-day period. So I would say that it's not something which will, result in a very sharp increase going forward. Of course, there will be a positive, going forward, because this quarter was, slightly higher than normal.
Got it. And Rakesh, the last question from my side would be on how you all see the ECLGS portfolio, right? It's a 12,000 crore sanction, and let's say 60,000-70,000 crore of ECLGS book. This portfolio, I think, it's fair to say that we don't really know the right debt servicing, what's happening there. So how do you look at the risk in this portfolio on the lending that we were having outstanding in February or March in FY22? This is a portfolio which could have its own stress next year, right? When all other portfolios normalize.
That is a possibility. I think we believe, where we have extended credit under this scheme. It's not that these are bad kind of given this extended this scheme. So it's not something that we are overly worried about about this portfolio where we have lent. Will there be some challenges that could come up? Definitely, because these borrowers would have got impacted by COVID, generally speaking. So I think in the outlook that we give, for example, others for next year, say, credit costs getting normalized, this is factored in, and we don't believe it's going to really be any material impact for us going forward, which is getting postponed due to this.
Also, actually, we have to see the disbursement to sanction ratio, and you will see that for stronger banks, the disbursement to sanction ratio is lower. And so that is one marker. The second marker we always see is that in general on the portfolio, how is the limit utilization? If economic activity has not picked up but limit utilization is happening very fast, that's also not a very, very good sign. So these are the two big markers. So when you look at these two markers, it looks okay at this point of time for us. I mean, there are no such red flags in that portfolio. So these are the two markers that we will have to see. Also, now we are seeing one by one sectors are coming back. As Sandeep had said that if you look at our ultra high frequency index, it is now above 100 for a few weeks now, which also means that if you are not there in those sectors which have not come up, rest is all business as usual. It is also showing up in the fact that, what is your 1 to 90 or 0 to 90 above your BAU, that has also declined sharply, which basically means that people are now getting cash flows and they are paying up. So all in all, I would say that, things are okay. Now, the other thing that one can always surmise is that how much of it is by way of refinancing, how much of it is by way of balance transfer, or how much of it is by way of pent-up demand. All those is very difficult to say. Of course, whenever interest rate suddenly falls, there is some activity on balance transfer and refinancing. That is for sure, it happens. But interest rates from here on, we don't think it's going to fall that much, so that balance transfer activity will come down. So shift of portfolio from one bank to the other will come down. And we don't think that it is that much of a pent-up demand for long, because now it has been open for 4-5 months. Last quarter also we had good disbursements and good book growth. This quarter also we had good disbursement, good book growth. And we look at, as I said, at a micro market level, yes, it is okay. I mean, we are still quite a bit of unsaturation is there for our customers and their needs. So that's what it is. And we have spoken to the ECGLS customers. We have got 100% of them, and we have spoken to them as well. They seem to be okay.
Perfect. Thanks. This was helpful. All the best.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, a reminder to participants to please limit your questions to. The next question is from Abhishek Murarka from IIFL Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thanks everyone. Congratulations for a great performance this quarter. So most of my questions have actually been answered. Just a small data point. So this debit card trend that you show on slide 21, there's quite a bit of a drop in the number of cards in the last quarter. Is there anything particular in terms of trend that you see there, or anything to read into it? How do we understand this drop? Because it follows a number of quarters of increase.
No, it would. In the last quarter, we would have done, some, removal of the inactive cards would have happened. Nothing more to read there.
But in general, Abhishek, just to give you some sense on the payment landscape that's happening, very, very clearly UPI is coming up. Debit card over a period, so it will first cannibalize debit card. Credit separate animal, because you get credit-free period. So credit card is a slightly different animal. So that is coming up. Credit card in its physical format replaced by card not present transaction. So e-com is going up. So payment system landscape is moving. And the good thing for us, bank like us, is that while everybody talks about other PSPs, but the fact is that all those transactions also go through the bank at the back end. So if someone says that we have got 100 million transactions happening through us, we should also by corollary understand that 100 million is also going to the banks. So it is now up to us to input that data also in our underwriting and in profiling, and making sure that we are able to utilize it better. I would also go on to the extent to say that many of them may not have fully utilized use cases. Banking system has use cases because you can lend to them, you can cross-sell to them with that data. So I would say that the data quality and the throughput of the data is certainly helping in understanding the client in a much deeper way. That also certainly is one of the drivers of our higher disbursement. It also helps us in pre-underwriting cases, and that is increasing. And so net with data analytics, it does have an impact on the way you underwrite and the speed by which you can underwrite and take through the transaction and reduce in a way cost of acquisition because you get data. So net, I think we are in a decent position and position well. It helps in liabilities, it helps in assets, it helps in crosses. So data, whoever utilizes, will have a better chance.
Sure. And Anup, just a quick follow-up on the growth question. I know you said that most of the pent-up demand is now, already in. So how do we look at this 7% QOQ? What part of this would be a normalized kind of growth number?
No, it's very, very difficult. Actually, this pent-up also we don't know. Who knows, when demand falls off. I will only say, Abhishek, that our market share is low, so, we have headroom to grow. So I would fall back more on market share rather than demand coming up. Of course, if there is demand, it is easier to grow, as you know. So it is difficult to see what is pent up, because housing, for example, because of the stamp duty reduction, because of work from home. So there are other factors which are there,
Right.
which is leading to demand of housing. And if you look at the ticket sizes, we look at our ticket sizes. If you look at the ticket sizes which are moving, that is also increasing. We were looking at our own data on salary. If you look at the number of people who are filing income taxes, and if you look at the gradation of that on the salaries, etc., very clearly you can impute what ticket sizes will move on housing, what kind of ticket sizes will move on auto. And then if you have good micro market data, which we have, then you can allocate your resources, attention, energy to that and get some share. So in general, that's the format that we are pursuing, and we have been reasonably successful so far. And I feel that if we continue, our market shares gain will happen. So that is how I will put it, Abhishek.
Great. Thanks so much, Anup, and all the best to the team for the future quarters. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you very much. We'll take that as the last question. I would now like to hand the conference back to the management team for closing comments.
Thank you everyone for joining today on a Saturday evening. Wish you all a healthy new year ahead. Thanks.
Thank you very much. On behalf of ICICI Bank Limited, that concludes the conference. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. You may now disconnect your lines.